Welcome, everyone, to the Just Go Explore podcast by Kelly and Carl's Adventures. I'm Carl.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are on a mission to visit all 63 U.S. national parks. And to date, we have visited 42.
Woohoo!
Today, in this episode, we will be going into part 3 of our 4-part series on the Arizona National Parks. If you missed any of them, part 1 was a general overview of the Arizona National Parks as kind of an ideal road trip itinerary. And we talked a little more into Sedona and a couple other areas like Page, Arizona, and some of the things you can do around those areas. And then part 2, we did a deep dive on Grand Canyon National Park. And this episode, we are going to dive into Petrified Forest National Park.
Yeah. So Petrified Forest National Park is definitely a park that surprised us. A lot of people like to hate on it, but we actually enjoyed our experience there. What were your initial expectations going into a visit at Petrified Forest National Park?
So, funny story, I had no idea what to kind of expect out of this part of our trip.
Yeah, I do all the planning, so I knew what to expect, but he had no idea.
Yeah, so I had heard a bit about it's, more like Arizona's more desert area and dry land, and this national park has dead trees. So I was picturing we were going to something like Namibia, and
Definitely
I was
not
completely
Namibia.
wrong about that. So Petrified Forest is a bit more like its terrain is more badlands.
Yeah.
With beautiful striations within the badlands, and then ancient petrified wood. So that's not just like dead logs. It's crystallized, fossified wood, which looks really unique.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that in a minute here, but it's definitely very unique. When you hear petrified forest, it's not actually a forest. There's just logs that are on the ground, but
remnants
they're
of the forest that was there at some point.
Exactly. So there's more remnants of that forest and literally fossilized wood that is really colorful and really pretty. So, yeah. Do you want to talk about some fun facts about Petrified Forest National Park?
Yeah. So, as we said, there's remnants of a forest. Now, this forest was like millions of years ago.
Yeah.
According to scientists, it's like 225 million years old. Which was in the late Triassic period when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth. I think I pronounced that right. But, and so on top of the wood that's there, they have found dinosaur fossils, which is pretty cool.
That is super cool. It's a really cool fact. Like, you can just picture the dinosaurs roaming here and the trees that must have been here back in time, and it's super cool. It's also really cool. So the wood is completely fossilized with quartz crystals of varying colors, and then the crystals like within the wood with the different colors, it just kind of depends on the minerals that seeped into the wood during that fossilization period. So minerals like iron, carbon, manganese, and more seeped into the wood over time and kind of created these differing colors of crystals within the wood. And that was just super cool to see in person. Like, it's not just one color. It's like golds and reds and just all sorts of different colors. It was really cool.
Yeah, and with as pretty as they are, there is one rule in this park. Do not take the petrified wood. It is completely illegal to take them as a souvenir.
Exactly. Yep. You can get arrested. So do not take any wood, no matter what the size is.
Yep. And we'll get into this a little later because there are some things that we found out when we went there that surprised us on the park hours and why that is. But another cool little fun fact about the park is that Route 66 used to run through the park, which was a major form of interstate before the interstates really existed and came to be. But old historic route, and in the park, it's just marked by an old rusty car.
Yep, it's pretty ordinary, but you can see the remnants of the
you can see where the road used to be
of the route, but like it's not an actual road. Like
the road's gone, but you can see where the road was, and there are still some power line poles that exist along the edge of the road. There's no power lines on them, but just the poles still exist. I was hoping it would be a road there, like some markers. There's no like Route 66 marker there anymore. It's just like the car.
Yeah. I mean, that might have been a little underwhelming, but that being said, it's just a cool historical fact that Route 66 went through there. And just something to keep in mind with going to Petrified Forest is that if you are a sunrise or a sunset person, you will be disappointed.
Yep. We found that one out on our trip.
Yep. So do you want to go into the story, or do you want me to go into the story?
Yeah. So, well, you can say, where were we coming from?
We were coming from, let's see. So we were coming all the way down from Chiricahua up to Petrified Forest. And this was like a 5-6 hour drive. So we'd been driving for a long time.
A long drive. We had left. We were like, we'll try to get to the park,
before golden hour.
Before golden hour. So we're looking like 5-6 o'clock, like trying to get there around then. Now, with it being a long drive, we had a couple pit stops along the way,
Yeah, of course.
So that slowed us down a little bit, but we still were like on pace to arrive about the time that we wanted to be there. We kind of figured that in.
And we always, like with all of the national parks we go to, we always try to prioritize seeing certain places at the best lighting. So we really try to prioritize being in these places when it's like golden hour and sunset and sunrise and And
we make our turn into the park road, and we are like venturing up to what we think is going to be like the park gate, and where we got to show our national parks pass, and the gate's closed. And we're like,
womp womp.
Yep. And so we're like, well, what is this? And then it says on the gate, park hours close at 5, and we arrived at like 5:05.
Yeah, we arrived right after the 5 o'clock mark. So not great.
Nope. But so the park hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And just keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that if you're in the park after 5, technically some of the trails that we saw
closed at 6.
So as long as you're in your car and going out of the park by 6, then you should be okay, generally speaking. You just might be approached by rangers and kind of encouraged to leave the park. So just keep that in mind. But for us, no luck getting in after 5. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And a lot of this has to do with them trying to prevent people from taking any of the petrified wood. And you may wonder, well, how would they know? Well, they literally weigh your vehicle as you come in and you exit. Like they have
pretty crazy
different means and cameras and different things, but it was wild.
Yeah, very crazy. So just to keep in mind with visiting, you can still see a lot of the layers of the Badlands and the different textures if you go to certain areas at either like right when it opens or right before it closes. So you can still get certain things out of, certain lighting in the park. But so like what we did is when we entered the park right at 8 a.m. the next day, we went right to Blue Mesa Trail, which is known for its Badlands. We'll talk a little bit more about the trail a little bit later, but we went right there straight when we got into the park and had the trail all to ourselves and got to see basically that trail in the best lighting of the day. So
that was a really cool trail.
Yeah.
So do you want to go into a little bit of how the park's laid out?
Sure. So the park has one main road. It is literally the main park road. It has 2 different entrances into the park on the north side of the road and on the south end of the road. So it's literally just one long road with a bunch of different overlooks and stops and hikes along the way. So it is extremely easy to route yourself and pretty impossible to get lost. So that is great.
Yeah. One other note to add is that at which end is it? One end of the park they have a campground. Well, it's not in the park; it's technically right outside the park, but like
It's on the southern end. Yeah, we camped at like a little free camp spot, right next to where the gate for the south entrance is. So
yeah. So if you are looking to, car camp or camper van or have a RV, they do have a campground right nearby, so you don't have to worry about driving, having to wake up and drive somewhere. Like you are right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Any other planning logistics to keep in mind?
Absolutely, always. It wouldn't be a national park trip without logistics. So, for one, there aren't any permits or reservations required to enter the park. So, there's no prior planning there necessary, which is great. It is a relatively quiet park, so there aren't really crowds. We didn't have any problem parking anywhere. It was very peaceful for the most part. Like, if you're looking for a park that doesn't have much going on in terms of people, this is the park for you.
Yeah, pretty easygoing park.
Yep.
Back.
Yep. And then the cell service in the park is limited, so just keep that in mind. Like I said, the road is basically one road throughout the park, so you aren't really going to get lost, but it's still best to download, offline maps, trail data, things like that. There are minimal food options within the park itself. There's one dining area called the Painted Desert Diner. Other than that, the only other thing is at the Painted Desert Inn, they sometimes have ice cream. So that is, those are your options. Otherwise, all food is going to be at Holbrook is the closest town. So just keep that in mind. We already talked about not removing the petrified wood. So that is extremely important, as we already mentioned. And then generally you can explore this park in one day because it is so condensed with one road and all the different sites and hikes along the way. You can easily kind of explore this one in one day. There are no like lodging or campgrounds within the park. We already mentioned the one campground that's right next to the southern entrance of the park. Otherwise, you would, a lot of your lodging options are in Holbrook, like I mentioned, and then you can potentially do backcountry camping, but you have to have a permit, which you can get at the visitor center.
Yeah. Same. Some other things to consider is the time of year to go. Really, there's no bad time of year other than summer. Mm-hmm. You just want to avoid the heat because it is, even though it's called Petrified Forest, there are no trees, which means there's no shade.
Exactly.
So it does get very hot in the summer. Mm-hmm. That is just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. What were your favorite hikes in Petrified Forest?
Definitely Blue Mesa Trail. Mm-hmm. That was the trail we started off our morning on. I thought it was it's a really cool trail. It is a little steep at the beginning. You do go down a bit. It's not crazy elevation, but there are a lot of switchbacks, winds kind of back and forth. But then it takes you kind of down into the Badlands. And it's just a really pretty trail that you can just do a loop around.
Yeah, I feel like we got some really pretty photos with like all the different colors of the like textured like rings on the mountains and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was really cool.
Yeah. And it's a nice, easy 1 mile loop. It is all paved, so that is, helpful.
Yeah.
And then did you have a favorite?
I think that was my favorite as well. I also did like the Crystal Forest Trail too. So that one, is also paved. It has the highest concentration of petrified wood of like varying colors within the park. So if you want to find petrified wood, I mean, any of the trails you'll find it, but particularly that one, you can get nice up close views of varying types of wood. So really cool. Yep. And that one's also an easy 0.8 mile trail. So it's not like a long trail or anything by any means.
We've said like most of these hikes are relatively easy from what we've talked about. And a lot of them were paved. So anything to keep in mind when hiking?
So fortunately, like you mentioned, a lot of the trails are pretty minimal in elevation gains. So that is really helpful. You can get a lot of different small trails done in one day and, not have overstrained yourself basically. So So yeah, you can kind of accomplish a lot. I would recommend going earlier or later in the day if possible for some of the different hikes, just because it is so hot in the middle of the day and the sun exposure can be very, very, problem. So just keep that in mind. It is hard to get lost, but we always recommend downloading trail data ahead of the time. And then obviously leave no trace. We recommend bringing a first aid kit always, things like that.
Yeah. Say some other cool facts about the park. There are animals there.
Yeah. What kind of wildlife do they have?
They have pronghorn deer.
Right? They aren't technically deer, but
I know, but they're called a pronghorn. Like a lot of people refer to them as pronghorn deer, even though they're not a deer.
Yeah. Or they say pronghorn antelope, which also is not true either.
Yeah. But the weird thing is they're like somehow related to like giraffes.
Yeah, I know. It's strange. It's pretty cool. Like giraffes are one of their closest relatives, which is very strange, but
yeah, they don't look anything like a giraffe.
No, they do not. They look more like a deer or antelope, but they are not. They are,
which is why they get called what they call.
Exactly. But they're technically closer in relation to a giraffe.
Do you know they're the fastest land animal in North America?
I do now.
Yeah, so they can run up to 60 miles per hour, which is faster than any of its current predators, which is crazy.
It's crazy that it can outrun literally anything that's trying to catch them. So.
Yeah, and is way faster than the speed limit in the park.
Yeah, so that is true.
They should get speeding tickets.
That is true. What other animals are in the park?
So they do have a deer in the park that is a deer, and it's called a mule deer.
Yeah.
And then they have coyotes, lizards, rattlesnakes, bobcats, and tarantulas.
Dun, dun, dun. That being said, we didn't see any of these things, but like a lot of the wildlife is more nocturnal in nature, so you probably won't see things like bobcats and tarantulas unless you are adventuring at night, which is mostly impossible.
Yeah, so unless you have a backcountry permit, you don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is some of like, okay, going not in the summer, you will avoid a lot of your other, like the rattlesnakes, they usually hibernate, and the tarantulas, same thing. So you don't have to worry about those as much if you're going in, winter, early spring, late fall. You may see some of the others.
Absolutely. Pretty cool. I don't know. It was, like I said, we didn't really see much wildlife ourselves. We did see pronghorns right outside the park when we were driving towards the park, but that was about it.
So, do you think the park is overrated, underrated, or perfectly rated?
I think that it is an underrated park personally. I think that, a lot of people like to say it's not super great. It's just these logs that are on the ground and that's about it. But I really found the Petrified Wood to be super fascinating. I found the Badlands landscapes to be super unique and just really pretty. So I thought it was underrated. What were your thoughts?
Well, I think with the expectation I had going in, it's probably underrated. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I get why people say what they say. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those parks that once you've gone, you don't need to go back. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I guess that's where there's like...
Yeah. I think if you had the option, would you go back to Petrified Forest?
Maybe for a backcountry permit just to be able to get photos at Golden Hour. But beyond that, no.
Yeah. That's what I think too. I wouldn't go back.
No.
I think we got everything out of the park that we needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a weird park to rate in some ways, because I think it's a park that it's worth going to.
Absolutely.
For sure. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's one that should be like high on your bucket list.
Yeah. But I definitely think it's worth being a national park. Like,
absolutely.
Some people say certain Certain other parks, cough cough, like the St. Louis Arch, shouldn't be
that should be a national monument
park
and not a national park. But
this one I definitely feel like should be a national park.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of historical significance to it. I think the science behind some of it, the research that's being done, like definitely
should be preserved. Absolutely.
And I think
it was way more fascinating in person than I thought in advance.
Yeah.
So,
and it's actually interesting. It's the park when it was established to what it is now. I think it's been expanded 3 times, is what we had read on one of the signs.
Yeah.
And that was as recent as like early 2000s. They had done their last expansion of the park to protect a little more of the land. So, it is an interesting, like, that people like to say, oh, it's not worth going, or it's an overrated park or whatever, and yet it's a park that keeps expanding.
Yep. Definitely a cool place. How would you compare Petrified Forest to some of the other Southwest national parks? Do you want to go like park by park, or do you want to just compare in general?
I mean, comparing, like, it doesn't compare to the Grand Canyon. Like, if there's like the hands down, my opinion, best park is Grand Canyon
in Arizona. Yeah. I will agree with that. How does it compare to Saguaro National Park in Arizona?
I think I still would put, like, if I'm ranking them, I think I'd put Saguaro above it.
Yeah.
I think to me, some of that is just, okay, growing up on the East Coast, you know, what we see landscape wise is so different. We don't experience cacti. Even in a lot of our other trips, we don't experience cacti. So it's like the abundance of cacti in that national park, just the landscape is so different.
Yeah.
That for me puts it a step above.
Petrified
I agree. Forest.
I think that if you compare it to Saguaro, there's less variety of things to do and see, and
But I think the other thing is, like, you can watch sunset and sunrise in Saguaro, which just, again, for me as a photographer, like, just puts it a step ahead.
Absolutely. How does it compare to the Utah national parks?
It doesn't.
I knew that would be your answer. I think that the Utah parks are better. I will be honest, it is probably the lowest on the totem pole when it comes to the Southwest national parks, but still worth going. I think,
the parks that you can group it with are, and this is somewhat obvious, is like Badlands National Park. They're very similar.
Yeah.
Similar in the sense of the Badlands, they're very different in the colorations.
Exactly.
And like Badlands National Park has a bit more grasslands around it and different wildlife.
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt is also kind of in that same grouping for like general landscape. Again, different colorations, a bit more grasslands, different wildlife.
Yeah. Some of those North Dakota and South Dakota parks are a little more comparable in terms of landscapes, but still Petrified Forest is still different.
Yeah. And a lot of that does come down to its colorations, the fact that it has the petrified wood, just
another place too that that is similar to is in Hanksville in Utah. We went to, like, it's technically called like Bentonite Hills, but it's like right next to the Mars Desert Research Center. There's like super cool colored hills basically, and it was similar in like appearance to the Badlands that are in Petrified Forest.
I of the Southwest, I think it's probably the lowest of my rankings for any Southwest National Park, but it is still a cool park.
Yeah, it still exceeded my expectations. So I think it was a successful trip.
Definitely, if you're in the Southwest, in that area, doing a national park road trip, don't leave it out.
Yeah, do not miss it. It's still worth going to. Absolutely. All right, I think that's all my final thoughts on Petrified Forest. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I think that's everything for that part.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing would be, like, if you want more information on the trails, other information about the park, along with some itineraries and stuff into, all of the Southwest National Parks. We do have a guide. We have 2 guides.
We have several guides.
Yeah.
So we have
that include these parks. We have the Southwest National Park Guide, which includes all of the Arizona national parks,
and
all of
the
the Utah national
parks,
along with like several other state parks and other areas that are like must visits, and some hidden gems in there.
Absolutely. And we have our
Arizona specific national park guide, which goes over all 3 Arizona national parks, along with several state parks and other areas to visit within the state of Arizona.
Yep. We can put those in the show notes for you guys if you're interested.
Yep. So they'll all be linked below.
Yep. And then as always, if you want more info about anything national parks or, just following along on our journey to visit all the national parks, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok technically, all at Kelly and Carl's Adventures.
Yep. Well, in the next episode, we will be going over which national park?
Saguaro National Park is next.
So we'll be doing part 4 of our Arizona, wrapping up the Arizona national parks, and we'll catch you there.
Yep. See you in the next one.